All right, so we've had an exciting start so far, haven't we? All right, you want to hear something? You want to know what the show's about? You want to know what I'm about? Are you still testing?
We're ready.
Oh, we're part of the show. All right, cool. Well, let me just start talking then. I'm Herb. I'm the Pirate King of Ephraim. I'm the foul-mouthed prophet. Never heard of a foul-mouthed prophet before, have you? But then again, you probably never met a prophet before, have you? How do you know any of the prophets in the Old Testament weren't foul-mouthed? You don't really fucking know that. I know if I was going to write down something about something God told me that blew my fucking mind, I probably wouldn't say, and it blew my fucking mind. I'd probably say something else. Anyway, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to lay it down for you, how the world works, starting with how the Mormons roll. Think about that. This is just like everybody else. The Mormons, they're supposed to be of the world, in the world, but not of the world, when in fact all they do is exemplify it. Matter of fact, they like to pick and choose their scriptures, just like every other church. I mean, you can't find a Christian church that actually believes everything that's in the Bible. Put money on it. Show me a preacher that says he believes everything, and I'll show you half a dozen scriptures he won't even touch. But I tell you what, if you believe it, you got to believe it all. And if you don't believe it, you got to have a reason why. And if you got a reason why to stand up to scrutiny, I'll convert today. I tell you what, man, if I'm wrong, then fuck Jesus. Anybody else in here got enough guts to say that? Anyone else on the planet?
Well, you got to feel it to believe it. Do you feel it?
I know it. Hey, do you know what qualifies someone to be a prophet? Two things: understanding and integrity. Don't go no further than that.
Well, you're definitely full of a lot of those
Yes,
attributes.
I'm full of a lot of those. Anyway, I'm going to tell you how the Mormons roll, man. Get this. Everybody knows a couple years ago, terrible tragedy. A couple boys got killed. Sons of a girl who was raised in Puyallup, moved to Utah, came back. Actually, no, she didn't come back, but her husband came back with the boys. We're talking about the Powell case. You guys remember the Powell case? Susan Powell, Josh Powell, the two boys. Susan Powell, she disappears in Utah. Nobody knows what happened. We still don't know. Bitch is dead. But they accused her husband of doing something. Maybe not the cops, but the community did. See, that's how Mormons roll. They decide, well, that looks suspicious, therefore you must have done it. Well, I'll tell you what, things got so bad for Josh Powell in Utah, he couldn't keep a job. His kids couldn't go to school with other people's kids. You know what other people's kids were saying? Think about it. They were telling him, your dad killed your mom. And whether it's true or not, you can't stay in that environment with your kids. So he comes back to Puyallup. Back to where he's from. Back to where his wife, Susan's parents are from. Chuck Cox, he's Mormon too. You know what he did? He did everything he could to separate those boys from their father. Now, the way Mormons roll, the way the world works, the worst sin you can come up with, it's called blood sin. What blood sin means is setting up someone else to commit sin, and most especially murder. So Chuck Cox, I don't care what his motivation was. He might have thought he loved those boys, but I saw what he did. Josh Powell tried to defend his reputation in the news by showing writings of his wife by her own hand in her own diary. But Chuck Cox would not let that happen. No, he had to fight the media perception that his daughter was a slut. Hate to tell you, Chuck Cox, but if you were a more manly example to her when she was being raised, she wouldn't have married some guy like Josh Powell and disappeared in the middle of Utah in the middle of the night. We still don't know she's dead. But you waved your finger, and you tore those boys away from their father. You put such pressure on him, you denied him the ability to defend himself before God and man. And of course, when push came to shove, when he was cornered, when he knew for certain there was no way to save his family, he became desperate. So yeah, he might have used the hatchet Josh Powell on those boys. But Chuck Cox, he swung that hatchet just as much as Josh Powell ever did. Every Mormon that Josh Powell went to for help and turned his back is guilty of blood sin. Every leader in Salt Lake that turns his back on this behavior routinely conspires against the children of men, the family of God. Here's a prophecy for you. Thomas Iscariot Monson will commit suicide. Anybody else got something to say? Does that sound crazy? Way out of left field, huh? Didn't think you were going to stumble into that much criminal or that much spiritual on the show, did you?
That's incredible. Not on the microphone. I can't see it here.
Have you guys heard about the hatchet-wielding hippie hitchhiker that saved the day?
Yes, a hatchet-wielding hippie hitchhiker. Say that fast 3 times. Hatchet-wielding hippie hitchhiker. And you know, he hit the dude 3 times. But what I don't get is why do you use the blunt end? I mean, it takes only one if you're using the sharp end, right? I'm a little bit more efficient than a hippie, I guess. Yeah, it's crazy. The guy who was, and you know what? I don't know many of the details behind the driver. I know the driver was saying crazy things like I can do anything, I can get away with anything, and he pinned some poor guy. Was it an impact, or did he just like let the vehicle pin? Was he still alive? Because that's
yeah, it was a city utility worker, and he pinned him up against the back of his truck.
And I believe the victim was a man of color. That's what I've heard. But it seems like everybody wants to play up the whole ethnic victim thing these days. What about the guy who was going crazy behind the wheel? What do we know about him? We know he was crazy, but I haven't really heard anything else except that he said crazy stuff in the hatchet-wielding hippie.
Well,
hit him 3 times.
He was recently convicted of attempted murder or something and sent to an Oregon mental facility where somehow he got released or escaped and obtained a vehicle somehow, or
now that's amazing. You know
back
what?
in Washington
This show is criminal spirituality, and there's really 2 kinds of criminals, but there's really only one kind of criminal. A criminal is really a businessman at heart, but there's another kind of criminal that people think is criminal, but really it's just psychopath. You know, people who go around hurting people for fun, those are the kind of guys who gravitate toward positions of authority, positions of power. You look at, well, not all cops. A lot of cops become cops because they want to be good people and protect the innocent. But a lot of them shave their heads, do steroids, put on a badge because they know they can get away with what they can get away with. And that's where society is heading. Now, what sort of a spiritual person would hand a badge to a lunatic on steroids as opposed to, say, a driver's license to someone who thinks it's okay to pin other people against another car? I mean, that's either way. You can't deal with people being out of control by being even more out of control and tyrannical. Because remember, the crazy guy behind the wheel, he can only hurt one person at a time. He might even be able to take out a crowd at a time. But a psychopath in a position of authority, that guy can fuck all of us at once.
What about these homeless hitchhikers with hatchets?
Yes, homeless hitchhikers. That sounds like
homeless hippie
I tell you
hitchhikers
what,
with
that
hatchets.
sounds like a hell of a campaign, man. I'm all for homeless hippies with hatchets. Instead of, screw mothers against drunk drivers. That was a giant joke. Everybody thought it was a good idea to try to protect people on the roads at night from crazy drunken drivers. But you know what? In my opinion, good folk are probably at home at night. Keep your ass off the road. Be at home with your kids. Do the right thing. Turn in early. Let the crazy people that are out drinking be out with the crazy people out drinking. Simple as that. You can't legislate away tragedy. Tragedy is going to exist. All you can do is change tragedy from one form to another. And for my part, if I'm going to have tragedy, I'd rather have tragedy on my own terms as a free man than have it imposed by some group that I'm never going to meet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Criminal spirituality at its best.
All right, you know what? I have burned up as much film as I need to. I've laid out the very basics of how the Mormons really roll. Oh, you know what? I left out a detail. Every 6 months, Mormons get together. They have a general conference, and supposedly the Word of God gets spread via this organization called Bonneville Communications. Can you think of any outlets around here they own? Think about this. While Josh Powell was trying to defend his name and keep his family together, Bonneville Communications was doing everything they could to add fuel to the fire. So think about that, Bonneville Communications. I dare you to sue me. Okay, so good thing I get to edit this.